for a very big challenge, because when I got the topic on selling, I was asking myself that how many of you are actually selling? Can I check? How many of you are actually selling? Yeah? Only 2 people in the whole wide room. Now let me rephrase the question. How many of you are selling directly or indirectly? All of you, right? So let's kind of look at this thing. Some of us feel that we are not selling. Is there anyone in the room who feels he's not selling at all? So the room is divided. The room is divided where people feel they're selling when they're not in sales, and some people feel they're not selling even though they are not in sales. Let's see what research says. So I'm going to present you something which was researched by Daniel Pink on social sciences, and he found out 1 out of 9 person is actually in sales. Yeah? So a huge population of the world is actually in sales. What does that mean? Think of the heads of commercial banks. Think of the heads of industries in FMCG. In technology, a lot of these CEOs come from a background of selling. How is that possible? Well, there's something selling is doing for them. And let me bring you to another statistic. That next statistic, 8 out of 9 people are actually selling, and the stat goes 40% of their time. Let's go a little deeper on this idea. Stay with me. Let's look at this person. Do you think she has to sell to make a living? Hands up. Do you think she has to sell? Now, my friend who thought he's not into selling, what do you think now? What does she sell? She sells her painting, right? So she has to sell, though she's an artist. She has to persuade. She has to cajole. She has to influence. Yes, Howard? So are you on this side or still on that side? Do you think you're selling? Yes, thank you. So if not, I still have one more slide to convince you. Do you think this guy is selling? How many of you feel this guy is selling? Everyone. So, wow, that was easy convincing all of you. So essentially, this guy is selling buildings, construction, the architecture he's doing, his consulting. All of us directly or indirectly, everyone is in selling. Yeah? So that is clear. Now let me take you to the next level. 2 goals I have for today. Number 1, it was to simplify consultative selling for you. Why is that? Because most of us are not into product selling. If you're not actually into frontline and you're actually not selling a hard push product, you actually are in consultative selling. And that's also new age. The second point I really want to do today is give you an empowering technique. So 5-step process which will help you sell. So are you ready for that?
Yes.
Can't hear you.
Yes.
Are you ready for that?
Yes.
Okay. But the most important thing is that why should you listen to this guy? Right? What gives me the ability to actually convince you and give you this technique? 13. Any guesses? What's that number?
Use you and self.
Yes. Thank you, Katharina. Give her a round of applause, please. 13 plus years is what I have spent my life, my working life in sales. 13 years. That's a lot of time. But more important than that is that 5. Any guesses? What is that?
5 rules.
5 roles. Oh, more than that. 5 different companies. These are 5 global recognitions on sales excellence. There has not been a year where I'd never exceeded my targets. Something is going on out here. Yeah? And the last point I want to share with you is 1,000 plus. Any guesses? What are these thousands of things I've done?
Consultation session.
Consultation sessions. These are multi-million-dollar contracts I've actually got signed in my different careers in corporate banking, in corporate services, all with multinational companies. So I know a thing or two on selling, and what I'm going to share is going to be based purely on my experience and research. So there's education and there's experience, which makes me an expert. Let's get on to it. What is consultative selling? Anybody? What do you think is consultative selling? Can we define it? Any guesses? Nelson? No?
To provide your advice.
Find out what your customer wants, and then
Find out what the customer wants. Thank you. Give him a round of applause. Now, in simple terms, consultative selling has many radical definitions. It's about making pie charts, making graphs, it's making those fancy charts, analyzing, detailing, probing. But in simple terms, it's finding out what the customer wants, what the customer needs. And when you find that, and then you provide a solution, that becomes consultative. Yeah? Let's go one step further. What's the difference between product push and consultative selling? Any guesses?
One is demand driven, one is supply driven.
One is demand driven, one is supply driven. Close. Yeah? Anything else? Afnur?
One seems to be one way and the other is two-way process.
Absolutely. That's a brilliant point. One is a one-way process, the other one is a two-way process. Anything else?
One is willing, one is not willing.
One is?
There's not willing to take the product. One is
Okay,
willing.
so one may be a pushing, even if the customer is not willing, right? So it's pushing him. So if I want to sell this to you, Nelson, I'm going to say, this is great, the feature, the advantage, the benefit, buy. But I don't care that you got 10 of these at home. That is product push. And all of this changes in consultative selling. May I ask you, Howard, what is your role?
I'm an IT officer.
You are an IT officer. Do you have to sell the idea of improving the process to your boss or stakeholder?
Yes.
That is consultative selling. Afnur, what's your role?
I work in the policy office.
You work in the policy. So if you're writing a policy, even you're editing a policy and you're making that tiny little change, don't you have to sell that idea?
I have to sell to my manager.
Absolutely. Now you don't call it selling, you call it influencing. You call it persuading your manager, but you have to sell that idea. That's how selling becomes. And what happens if you get empowered with a scientific technique which works for everyone? Then selling just becomes so easy. Now some of you are already unconsciously using the technique, but check if there's an element you're missing from the 5-step process, because if you are, your selling is not complete. Your persuasion is not complete. Yeah? Let's move on. That nicely brings me to the 5-step process. So what is this 5-step process? Now, obviously, if you're going to research and check on the net and read the books, you're going to find hundreds and hundreds of different techniques and different processes. But let me tell you, this consolidates all of that, and my endeavor to simplify it, my endeavor to demystify it, my endeavor is to make it so simple that all of you can follow and apply. And I'm hoping after I share these 5 things with you, that you can use them in your daily life. And if you can't, you will have the video for refreshing your memories. All right? So unfortunately, the people who couldn't come today, because this may change your career, because the most important thing you can change is that job you want, that interview you want to crack. If you can actually impress people in the interview, all the credentials go out of the window because that person wants you. And if you can use this technique to get at least one job, give me a cut. So what is the first step of selling? Purpose. Identify the purpose. There's nothing more important than to understand, what did you say, my friend? The problem. To solve the problem. What is the problem? Before you jump to the solution, you got to understand what's the problem. You got to understand what's the need. You got to actually figure out what is this guy wanting. And if you don't spend good amount of time here, you have a problem at your hand because you're going to be solving something which the customer doesn't want. Yeah, clear so far? Let me share with you one example. Amazon, right? They solve problem daily and thousands of problems. What kind of problems? Internet going down. Somebody leaking the news of Kindle. Recently, I came across a beautiful case study. Everyone heard of the Kindle? Yes? All right. Have you heard of the Kindle called the Kindle with offers? How many of you? So it's essentially advertising on the Kindle, right? So Kindle with offers. You know what was the launch time from inception to shipping? Guess. I need a number. What was the launch time, duration? How much time did they launch that product in?
3 months.
3 months. Very good, very close. Sounds impossible, right? 37 hours. The product was launched. So it is a very interesting story. What actually happened was that there was a leak, before the product is launched, like Apple phone, iPhone 8, everyone started leaking it. Now they had a choice to ignore it like Apple. Apple doesn't care. You can keep leaking as much as you want. Or they could capitalize on that leak because the media was all over there that this new Kindle is coming, but they had no plans to launch a Kindle. So they got a war team, they call a war team, and actually understood what's the problem. They identify all the problems which is needed to be solved to launch that Kindle. The war team was working in an agile method, of course, my favorite management philosophy, and they shipped the Kindle in 37 hours flat. That is the power. And 80% of the time was solving the problem, was identifying the problem, was working with the problem. Yeah? And the actual execution was just 20%. Because if you have a plan which is robust, it is like, have you seen that some people make that magical game where they have 100 different layers of machine and craft and the ball comes down? That is what it is. That is solving different problems, and when you do tuck, that's execution, flawless. That was an example on Amazon on how much time they really spent on identifying the problem. The second thing, establish credibility. What makes you think, what makes your customer think that you can solve his problem? There are 3 ways you can do this: experience, education, and expertise. If you don't do that, you will not have the listening, attention. The customer will not listen to you. You got to establish this. Now, if you haven't established credibility already with internal stakeholders, that is fine. Now you have won that battle. You don't have to do it again and again. But sometimes you have to do it again and again when you're solving a new problem. Yeah? So let's take Howard's example. He's a IT.
Yes.
IT.
Online banking?
He's into online banking. Now, obviously, it's established that his good understanding on online banking. But what if he's talking to a stakeholder and I ask him about infrastructure, architecture on IT, and he has experience, but this guy doesn't know? Does he have to establish credibility? Yes or no? Yes or no? Yes. So every time, and it doesn't take time. If you notice, I put in my picture over there, and I put in some statistic over there. What was my purpose? Aston? My purpose to put my picture over there was to establish trust, credibility, expertise. Because if I don't do that, then why would you listen to me? I would be simply copying paste, Control V and Control C from some book. Yeah, that is not powerful because I'm not speaking out of expertise. I'm speaking out of copy paste. That's not fun. You don't want to listen copy paste because it's there on the net. It's there in your hands. In the palm of your hands, you can look at copy paste anytime. It's just a press of a button. But you want to listen to the practitioner. The practitioner who worked for 13 years, the practitioner who's got awards in sales excellence, the practitioner who did multi-million-dollar deals. Now you're listening, otherwise you're not. And how much time it takes? 1 minute. Very important step. Establish credibility. Take a minute, but say why you are in a good position to solve that problem. That brings me to the next step. Very nicely probe to understand. Why is this important? Anyone? Okay, let me give you a hint. What famously Steve Jobs said. Steve Jobs used to say that if I ask my customers what do they want, they don't know. So my customers don't know what they want until I give it in the palm of their hands, because they haven't seen it. All their life they were using keys, and if I ask them to imagine something like a finger managing the whole phone, is impossible. So sometimes people don't know what they really want, and most often when I coach people, they come with a problem, but the issue is something else. Let me share with you a quick story. Life coaching. There was this girl, yeah? This girl who broke up. She broke up with 3 relationships. And every time she used to blame the relationship, every time. And when she came to me and asked me, this is my problem, I can't stick on a relationship. And actually, the problem after 1 month of coaching turned out to be childhood problems. When she was just a little girl, her parents left her. When she was a little girl, her parents left her with her grandparents, and for a good 20 years, she never saw them. And that fear, that phobia built into her, and it went all the way up, and before the guy could dump her, she would dump them. Because she could not bear the pain of being left again. And so that's why people just don't know what their real problem is. So as a consultant, as a coach, you really need to figure out what the problem is. Most often people don't know. And Albert Einstein said a beautiful thing. The mind which created the problem cannot see the solution. And today I shared with you why consultants make millions of dollars. Not that they know more. Not that they're better experts, but they are just not a part of the problem. They look at the problem from a distance with an objectivity which is missing in the person who is the employee who created the problem. And therefore, detachment is such a powerful tool. If you step away from the problem, you will see the solution. And let me leave you with a tip. If you write a journal, you will get objectivity in solving your personal life problems. Yeah? So that is probing, drill, find, research, because this will help you ascertain the real problem. Number 4, now it's time to present the solution. All this hard work for what, right? And what I'm giving you may be sometimes done in a few months, but what I'm giving you can be done in a few minutes as well. If you follow this 5-step, and the solution can be, okay, this is the way you're going to solve a problem. So taking Howard's example, if it's in online banking and there's a bug in the system, all that you need to do is debug. Now the guy who's the business guy doesn't understand what that means, but he knows, right? That is it. So he's going to present the solution. I'm going to debug this, send it to my development team in Guangzhou. They're going to do that solution, and that is it. He presented the solution in 2 minutes. Everyone with me? Now that you have done the whole thing of probing, now is the time, because if we don't give him how he's going to solve the problem, he's not happy with the time he invested with you. He's not happy paying you. Sooner or later, you'll not be a great consultant. And there will be a day when you guys will have to go for another interview, when you will have to go to another company, and then these stories become really powerful, because they're going to ask you, how did you solve that problem? We are in the business of solving problems, right? Especially people who are in IT, who are in online banking, who are in different kind of spaces where you don't work directly with the customer. And of course, it's kind of obvious for the people who work directly with the customer. So that is presenting the problem. Help him visualize. Help him how it will look once the problem is solved. Help him describe the solution. And finally, demonstrate if possible. And when you do this, then you actually are giving him conviction that you are the guy who's going to solve this problem today. Yeah? And that leaves me with the final step. That is kind of a good transition. Anyone can guess what's the final step? The 5th step? All this hard work, what do we do? summarize, yes. So it's essentially agree on actions. Now, the traditional method was close, 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 always be closing out of the window. Nobody likes pushy people. Nobody likes that snake oil salesman. That's the old days. Now you want somebody who actually goes through a process, is not pushy, nudging. You can nudge him. So you actually have to agree on action. You can open a dialogue that this is, when can we have the next engagement? Keep it open, don't close it. I'm against closing, conclude it. Close if it's absolutely necessary, because we are relationship people and the business keeps on coming again and again. So the important thing is that agree and commit. You commit and the customer commits on how you're going to collaborate and make the problem no more a problem with your solution. Yeah? So those are the 5 steps. Let's recap. What are the 5 steps? So the 5 steps is, number 1, you need to identify the purpose. Establish your credibility. Once your credibility is established, what do you do next? You actually probe further to understand what is the real problem. Once you got the real problem understood, you got to present the solution, and finally agree on the actions. Everyone clear? 5-step process. Is there any step you did not understand? Everything crystal clear. So that brings me to the question to you. Is now everyone in selling? Yes or no? Can everyone sell better with this empowered technique?
Yes.
Thank you. So it brings me to the last part of my presentation. Leave you with a beautiful thought from my favorite poet, Robert Louis Stevenson. He said, I find it useful to remember that everyone lives by selling something. Thank you.